What's up, everybody? DracoFinn here, and today we are gonna be ranking every single Zelda game in the series. For those of you who don't know, this is my favorite series of all time, and I just felt like ranking it. If you look at this list right here, there's actually like a decent amount of redundancy because this included a lot of the remakes, but this was the only tier list I could find that had Age of Calamity in it. So because of that, there are a couple repeats. And we have 4 tiers. We have S, A, B, C, and not played. I have not played every single Zelda game, so for the ones I haven't, we'll go there. And I want to preface this by saying that if this were a tier list of every single video game ever made, I would honestly put like a majority of these games in S tier. I think the Zelda franchise as a whole, like each of the games are phenomenal in their own way. They're all so good. So if I put a game in C tier today, which is the lowest tier, I'm not saying that it's a bad game. I just think relative to the other Zelda titles, it's weaker. Because I do think all these games are really good, but I do think some of them are better than the others. So if your favorite is in C tier, it's not to say that it's a particularly bad game. I probably still enjoyed it. I don't think I've ever played a Zelda game and really didn't enjoy the experience. I've loved all of them for different reasons, but it means I liked it less than some of the others in the series. So right off the bat, let's start with probably the most recent Zelda game to come out on the Switch. Not probably, it was Skyward Sword HD, whatever you want to call it. For me, A tier game. Okay, so I know a lot of people don't like this game because of the motion controls. The game does kind of force them down your throat, but I truly believe they were done really well. Like on the Wii, I know people had different experiences. I know there's even clips of like, I think Miyamoto, when he was presenting it, it wasn't even working properly with the bombs, but like the motion controls I feel are like really, honestly, like really solid. The way the game implemented them was so creative. Like a perfect example of that is like the Beetle. Like all the games, or most of the games leading up to Skyward Sword, had some sort of boomerang, and the boomerang is not very like you can't. The whole point of a boomerang is that you only dictate where it's gonna go. You don't actually dictate its motion in air. So while I think they could have done something like a motion control boomerang, they chose for the Beetle, and it was such a creative idea. And I don't know, this game has just phenomenal dungeons, a really good story. It's, for those of you who don't know, it's the first in the timeline. It's the story of how the Master Sword is created, and Demise is like essentially the first Ganon, and then the curse he places on Link is like why Ganon keeps on reincarnating. A lot of people complain that you have to revisit areas, right? Like the first 3 dungeons are in completely new areas, and then the latter 3 dungeons are revisiting those areas. And then on top of that, the Sky Keep is just a combination of all the other dungeons, right? Like that's what people say, and they say, "Oh my god, this game just rehashes the same things over and over again." But you have to think about it like, yes, you do visit Faron twice, you do visit Lanayru twice, and Eldin twice, but you're visiting like different parts of the map. So like, while maybe the setting may be similar, you're still in a different area. It's still new terrain, it's still new environment with new enemies. It's just, it keeps a similar aesthetic as before. You know, like it's not like they took the first part of Eldin Volcano and then just recycled it and you visit that same part again. No, it's completely different. And Skykeep, yeah, Skykeep is really a combination of the other dungeons, but again, it's unique. It just takes the environments and the settings of the other dungeons, but it makes it its own dungeon. It's still super unique, and it was really well done. The game's bosses are phenomenal. Ancient Cistern is hailed by many as one of the best Zelda dungeons, and I can see why. Koloktos is a firefight. Ancient Cistern itself is just a really good dungeon, really entertaining. In my opinion, the best one in this game is probably Sandship. I love the concept of that this game does with like the time stones and whatever, and the Sandship really enhancing that, yeah, it was just great. I don't want to ramble on too long about Skyward Sword, but I think it's a solid A-tier game. Now let's talk about... You know what? Let's just get this out of the way. So I have not played the original. I have not played... This is just a combination of two games, so I'm not going to talk about that. This is just a combination. I've not played Four Swords, Adventure of Link, and Link's Awakening. Those are the 4 big ones I have not played. Oh, and Oracles. Man, there's actually a lot of this series I haven't played. But these 6 games, I don't have any thoughts on because I have yet to play it. I did not get Link's Awakening for the Switch because I'm going to be honest. When it first was revealed, I was not the biggest fan of the art style. But now looking back on it, I can see that, like, it's still a Zelda game. And I don't think the art style is bad. It just, initially, I was just kind of, like, disappointed. But regardless. You know what? Let's do a controversial one. Ocarina of Time. So, for remakes, like for Ocarina of Time and Ocarina of Time 3D, I'm only going to talk about 3D. Because Ocarina of Time 3D, from what I remember, is just a strict upgrade to the original. It just made... It kept, the entire base game the same. It just made, like, quality of life improvements. And big ones. Like, I think the most notable one is Water Temple. You have to keep pausing and unpausing to take off iron boots in the original. You can just do that touchscreen on in the 3D remake. So I'm only going to talk about 3D. And I'm actually going to put 3D in A tier. Now, I know Ocarina of Time is really controversial. Like, there is a large majority of the fan base that hails it as the greatest game of all time. And there's a large majority of the fan base that claims it's the most overrated game of all time. And a common follow-up argument to that is that Majora's Mask is much better, which we'll get to Majora's Mask. But Ocarina of Time, for me, is just a solid experience. I remember playing through it, and, like, I was never bored at any point, but I was also never blown away at any point, if that makes sense. Like, it's still a really fun experience, but, like, there are certain parts of some of the other games that I'll talk about when we get to S tier that, like, blew me away at parts. And Ocarina of Time is just, like, it's solid. It's just a solid baseline. You know, like, the first 3 dungeons as a kid were great, and then the later 4 dungeons were all just really solid. Forest Temple, Fire Temple, Water Temple, Shadow Temple. They're all just really good dungeons. I know the Water Temple is infamous, but it's still a fun dungeon. Like, the puzzles and whatever, I still like doing it. Spirit Temple is really cool. You have coming as a kid, you come in as an adult, and the final boss, everything. It's just solid, right? And I think why this game is hailed as, like, the greatest game of all time is because it's like a similar vein that, like, Mario 64 is held in, right? Like, Mario 64 is a good game, don't get me wrong, I liked it, but people, like, but I would say, like, almost, like, objectively, in terms of, like, how the game runs, it's inferior to later 3D Mario titles, right? Because it makes sense. As more time goes on, the things will get more advanced. But because it was the first introduction to 3D, I'm pretty sure it was, it will always be hailed as something more than it is, I feel like. I don't know. Maybe I'm wording that wrong, but I wouldn't, like, I would say, like, there are better 3D Marios. And like Ocarina of Time, I think there are better 3D Zeldas. For example, like Skyward Sword. That's why Skyward Sword is slightly above it. I do really like Ocarina of Time. I'm not trying to slander on it. I think it's just, again, really solid package through and through. I guess we talked about Ocarina. Let's talk about Majora's Mask. So, Majora's Mask, unlike Ocarina of Time 3D, changed a lot in the 3D remake. Which is why I'm actually going to rank them separately. I'm going to put OG Majora's Mask in S tier. OG Majora's Mask is a really amazing game. I'm honestly so shocked that Nintendo of all companies made a game like this. Like, if you don't know me, I love when Nintendo gets, like, darker with its IPs, when things get more serious. Which is why Majora's Mask blew me away when I first played it. The whole game is so somber. Like, you have 3 days left to live. Everybody around you is either, like, panicking because of it. And then, like, it's just such a unique concept. Like, who sat down and was like, let's make this game where the guy collects masks? But it works so well in so many different ways. I remember initially playing it, and I hate being put on a timer. Like, I love taking time with my games. And when my initial impression was Majora's Mask is like, man, I don't want to be put onto the clock. But like the clock adds like in a sense like a small layer of like anxiety. Like, damn, like I got time, but I don't have all the time in the world. And it essentially forces you to play a little faster pace. But I found that because of that clock, there were some puzzles I solved faster. There were some enemies that I tried new strategies on because I was more desperate to beat them because I had no time. And the big thing for me was collecting the damn little fairies. Like, I would be going crazy because it'd be the last day. I'd have 4 hours left and be like, where is the last fairy, bro? Where? And it's just honestly like the dungeons are great, phenomenal. I love the transformations. It's so cool. Like the second dungeon where you're like, rolling around at the speed of sound, like that shit was great. As a Goron, and then Zora swimming is great. This is where the change comes between Majora's Mask and Majora's Mask 3D, is that Majora's Mask 3D, you can't swim without using magic, and that kind of blows. But me personally, because I played Majora's Mask 3D first, so I don't have the perspective of this playing like Majora's Mask as a kid and just like swimming around like randomly for fun, like a lot of people did, and that's why a lot of people really didn't like the remake. So, like, I'm not gonna put this in S tier, but I think the remake is still fine. I don't know. That's just me. Anything else to say about Majora's Mask? The final boss is really cool. Fierce Deities Link is like probably like one of the reasons I love this game so much. Like, not even just playing as Fierce Deity Link, but the existence of Fierce Deity Link, the existence of this version of Link that is like has a sword 2 times stronger than the Master Sword, and is like this unknown like god essentially that is just never talked about in the other games, never really acknowledged, and like stuff like that is just really cool. I don't know. And let's not forget, Majora's Mask has Stone Tower Temple, which in my opinion is one of the best temples in any Zelda game. What a phenomenal experience. Like, just flipping it upside down. It really feels like a gauntlet. It really feels like a final gauntlet. I don't know. It was just a wonderful experience. Through and through again. So because of that, Majora's Mask, S tier game. Minish Cap, B tier. Okay. I really like Minish Cap. I think it's a great game. It's similar to Ocarina of Time for me in the sense that it's just solid throughout the whole game. Like, I now keep in mind, out of all the games here, Minish Cap is the one I played the longest ago and have not replayed since. So I have the worst memory of this game and probably Phantom Hourglass. Comparing it to Ocarina of Time, like, I was like just as hooked into Ocarina of Time as I was Minish Cap. The problem with Minish Cap is that it's shorter than Ocarina of Time, which causes me to put it in B tier. I think it's only like 4 or 5 dungeons. I'm not saying it's a short game, but the thing is Ocarina of Time has like 8 dungeons. So while none of them like blew me away, like I liked all of them. I thought all of them were great, but none of them like really like left like a memorable imprint on me, except maybe the Shadow Temple. But it had so many different dungeons and it had so many opportunities that like even if nothing like flat out blew me away, there were all these like little things that I just got to see that I got to appreciate for Ocarina of Time. Minish Cap, because it doesn't have as many dungeons, it had less opportunities to do that for me. It has Vati, which is a great villain. It has like Rock's cape. I forget what the cape is called, where you can like jump, and that was crazy. And I love walking around as Little Link, and then like Little Link in like especially like when you're thrown in these smaller environments and you see everything enlarged because you're small, like that stuff was really cool. It just, if it was a little longer, I think it would be an A tier game for me, but I gotta put it in B tier just because it was a little too short for me. I don't know. I kind of blasted through it, but that's just me. Let's talk about Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess is a crazy game. Similar to Majora's Mask, it is a darker themed game. I mean, you can play the game for like an hour and already see like, whoa, this is darker. Like the enemies are like, Like if you compare it to like something like Skyward Sword, it's less cartoony. It has more of like a not realistic, but in the same sense, kind of realistic um interpretation. Like just the art style is darker in general. The whole world is darker in general. It's because the whole concept is the world is being shrouded by twilight. I actually really fuck with the story of Twilight Princess. I love it. I love how like Ganon really is not involved until the end. Like the whole point of the game is beating Zant, and then Ganon comes out. And I thought that was so cool because I can't think of another Zelda game off the top of my head that did something like that. Like I feel like the antagonist in Zelda games is usually pretty well forecasted, and this was really cool. Wolf Link was great. I think the story of it is actually insanely good. Midna's an awesome character, probably one of the best side companions to Link. And there are just these moments that like really I think hook you as a player. Like Midna's lament was crazy. Just the and the beginning part where like the kid gets kidnapped by like the Bokoblin King. I forget his name, the Bulbo King, and like you fight him on the bridge. That was so awesome. And like Link does that like cool pose at the end. It was like stuff like that where the game did not need to do that. I feel like the game could have just gone in like a straight like dungeon pattern like normal and still would have been great. But it's like those little things where like implemented an actual story that really makes me appreciate it. Turning into a wolf is fucking badass. I don't care what anyone says. That is so cool. As a kid, I really didn't like the areas where you were forced to be a wolf, just because I was scared. Like they're terrifying. Look at the Twilight Bees, bro. That's nightmare fuel for like a 10-year-old. This is the like one of the first games that we're talking about right now that, in my opinion, has like a standout dungeon. Like Majora's aside from Majora's Mask has Stone Tower Temple. Twilight Princess has Arbiter's Ground. Arbiter's Ground, I don't even know where to begin with Arbiter's Ground. Arbiter's Ground is like one of the best Zelda dungeons, period. The terrain, what you do, the spinner, the boss, everything. It's so good. It's so good. And like none of the other dungeons are bad. Like I would say like maybe the house, like the one with Blizzetta was a little weaker just cuz I didn't like the Blizzetta boss fight, but like even then like it was just so crazy. Like the whole experience through the dungeons were great, the items were great, the story was great, the setting, the music, it's always good for a Zelda game. And what really puts this game over the top for me is because of the final sequence. The final fight with Ganon is 4 phases. That is unheard of. That beats, I think that's tied with Wind Waker for Ganon phases. But the difference with Wind Waker is that you fight 3 phases of Puppet Ganon and then 1 final duel with Ganon. Whereas Twilight Princess, it's completely different every single time. You fight Puppet Zelda, then you fight Beast Ganon, then you fight Ganon on a horse, and then you 1v1 that motherfucker. It's so epic, bro. It's so epic. Easy, easy, easy S tier. Would I put it above Majora's Mask? It's been a while since I've played it, but I think I'm going to leave it like this for now. Phantom Hourglass. Okay. Phantom Hourglass, in my opinion, it's okay. Do I think it's overhated? Yes, I do. I think that Phantom Hourglass has some of the honestly, some of the best dungeons in the series, I think. Like, it's just, the lineup for dungeons is just so amazing. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but the ones that stand out to me are, like, the Goron one with the bomb shoes, and then Muto's Pyramid, I think it's called, with the hammer. That dungeon is awesome. That dungeon is so awesome. Phantom Hourglass has a great world. It is the sequel to Wind Waker. It introduces Linebeck as a serious character. And Tetra, and Zelda's not even in the game. Like, I mean, you can count Tetra as Zelda, I guess, but let's just talk about the elephant in the room. The biggest reason Phantom Hourglass is hated, Temple of the Ocean King. And this is where I kind of have to agree. So how it works is you start off on this one island and you have like the map of like one quadrant of the world. So you need to go through the Temple of the Ocean King to get another quadrant of the world. And you do that 3 times. And then and like it's different every time. Right? Like you go deeper and deeper in each time. The issue is you have to go through the stuff you've already done each time. And I think total you have to go through the Ocean King, Temple of the Ocean King, like 8 times or 7 times or something ridiculous. And the game does give you warps, but a lot of it ends up being really repetitive. I would say, unlike the other DS Zelda, they didn't get too creative with the Temple of the Ocean King. I don't know. I feel like for every like innovative thing it did, it repeated like 2 or 3 things. That might just be me, might just be my bad memory, but regardless, going through the same temple like 8 times I think is a bit much. It's a bit ridiculous, but the game has some great dungeons. I think a lot of people just, in general, just don't like the DS Zeldas. I am not one of those people. These were actually amongst the first Zelda games I played, and I love them. Because I think they're actually legitimately good. But Phantom Hourglass, ooh boy, okay. I don't know about that one, Chief. But I'm going to put it in B tier. I don't think it's bad. I think it's fine. It's just, there are a lot of problems, and they are rather evident. Like, I don't think when people shit on Phantom Hourglass, I think some of it is definitely, like, unwarranted, but there is a lot of criticism for Phantom Hourglass where I can look at it and kind of be like, yeah, you kind of spitting. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. That might just be me. You know what? Okay, we talked about Phantom Hourglass. Let's do Spirit Tracks. Now, Spirit Tracks, completely different story. Spirit Tracks, in my opinion, is a masterpiece. It is a phenomenal game. So, similar to Phantom Hourglass, where Phantom Hourglass has the Temple of the Ocean King, Spirit Tracks has the Spirit Tower. However, unlike the Temple of the Ocean King, the Spirit Tower is different each time you go through it, and it is insanely good. I truly think like Spirit Tracks like nailed the Spirit Tower, nailed the dungeons. The music is some of the best in this series. I don't care what anyone says. Like the flutes and like the sanctuary is crazy. The story is actually really good. Spirit Tracks is the only game in the entire series where Zelda is with Link throughout his entire journey. Like, yeah, her body is gone, but the spirit of Zelda is with Link. And like, it's the only game where you get to see their dynamic really build up. Like, I feel like the only other Zelda game that has a dynamic between the two is like maybe Skyward Sword. And yeah, they got a close dynamic, but that's already like a pre-developed thing that you come into the story with. You don't get to see it. Like these two, you see them get close. What I think the biggest thing about Spirit Tracks is that every single other Zelda game is a story about Link saving Zelda, and then together it's like Link saving Zelda, and then together they beat Ganon, right? And like that formula's fine. Obviously, I love the formula, otherwise I wouldn't like the series. But like Spirit Tracks is not about that at all. Spirit Tracks is about Link and Zelda together saving the world, and it's just such a beautiful like motif. Like even the final boss, Malladus, like Link is like trying to like stab him with the Locomo sword, and he can't do it. And then like the final section is like Zelda running over to him, and together they thrust it into his head and they kill him. And it's like that whole theme, the whole dynamic, it's so good. Like I wouldn't sit here and say Zelda games have the strongest stories, but like this story, I think it really means a lot to me. I think it's a really well done story. The characters are great, the dungeons are great. There are 5 dungeons, and I wouldn't say any of the dungeons are particularly strong, I can't lie. But none of them are bad, you know? And for like, even if the dungeons are kind of like they're decent, like the Tower of Spirits is phenomenal. Every single floor is amazing. And the final floor is one of my favorite like post-game Zelda sections ever. Like the final section in Spirit Tracks and Phantom Hourglass, I think are both really good. Like in Phantom Hourglass, you fight Bellum, and then you fight him on the ship, and then you fight Linebeck. And Spirit Tracks, you fight first you fight Burn, and well, that's not in the final section, but you fight Burn at some point, and then you fight the Demon Train, you fight Chancellor Cole, and then you fight Malladus. And I don't know, man. I think it's a phenomenal game. This is gonna ruffle some feathers, but I rest my case. Okay, hold on. Do I want to be killed for this? Is it worth it? Nah, yeah. You know what? I'm kidding. But this is probably... I'm honestly willing to do that, to be honest. Like, it's just such a good game. But, like, also putting it above these two is kind of mad to me. But that's just my opinion. You know what? Screw it. I love them. They're great games. Spirit Tracks a phenomenal game, 10 out of 10. That is probably my most controversial Zelda opinion. But it is what it is, man. I can't sit here and lie to you about my opinion, right? Link Between Worlds. S tier. Link Between Worlds is... like, where do I even begin with Link Between Worlds? It's such a good game. It's so unique. It's like, the way I describe Link Between Worlds is like, in a similar way that I think of Ocarina of Time and Minish Cap. I wouldn't say there's any part of the game that blows me away, right? There's no part of the game, like, unlike Majora's Mask, which had Stone Tower Temple, unlike Twilight Princess that has Arbiter's Ground and has the story, and actually so does Majora's Mask too. Link Between Worlds, I can't think of a time it really, like, oh my god, like, it really blew open my eyes. So by that logic, somebody might be wondering, okay, so then why is it higher than Ocarina of Time? Why is it higher than Minish Cap? Minish Cap is like a solid line at a height of, like, 8. Ocarina is at a solid line of, like, 9. And Link Between Worlds is at, like, a solid line of, like, 10 for me. It's so... I don't even know where to begin. It's such a good game. All the dungeons hit. The whole buying items concept is so well done. It adds this whole new significance to rupees that you really never considered before. And the game gives you freedom. Like, you can choose which dungeons you want to do. The process is not streamlined. And, like, this is my one fascination with Nintendo. Like, I don't know how they take these, like, seemingly dumb concepts on paper and execute them perfectly. Like, it happened with Majora's Mask, with the masks. Like, who the fuck, who would care about Majora? Like, who would care about Link wearing a bunch of masks? But they make you care. Same thing with Link Between Worlds. Link turning into a painting, who thought of that? But they executed it perfectly. Perfectly. Yuga is a lit-ass villain. He's great. The whole lore rule thing is so awesome with Hilda and Ravio. The story is great. I'm trying to think, like, were there any dungeons that I really liked? I really liked Thieves' Hideout, I would say, and Lost Woods was good. And there was, so there's Thieves' Hideout. Yeah, I would really only say Thieves' Hideout, and even then, like, it was okay. Like, none of the dungeons in this game, like, blew me far back, like the aforementioned 2 or 3, right? Like, if you count Spirit Tower as a dungeon, then yeah, that blew me away. Oh man, here I was thinking that S tier is getting cluttered, but there's still a couple entries I have to add to S tier. Okay, you know what? I want S tier to be a little bit more selective, so I think I'm gonna do this. And I can't consciously put any of these below S tier. I just can't. Spirit Tracks I could kind of understand the argument for, but these two, hell no. These three, hell no. No, I can't consciously put these three in S tier. Or below S tier, I just can't. You know what? Let's do Wind Waker. Okay. Wind Waker. Yeah, it is what it is. I don't even know. I have no words to describe Wind Waker. It is such a good game. All the dungeons hit. The story hits. The story is actually probably, like, tied with Spirit Tracks and maybe Breath of the Wild and Twilight Princess. Like, probably, like, my favorite. I really love the brother-sister dynamic. I love how the first half of the game, the motivation, Zelda's not even involved. It's about saving your little sister. And when you finally do that, Link realizes that the power he's obtained thus far to save his sister is one that is needed to save the world. And then he goes saves the world. And it's just, it's such a great, like, subtle storytelling that really makes me appreciate it. Toon Link is honestly, like, one of, if not my favorite reincarnation of Link. I just really like him. I like his design. I like how, like, driven he is to save his sister. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think the game has aged beautifully. Like, you can look at the graphics of Wind Waker and be like, God damn, this game looks good. Tower of God is an insanely good dungeon. I know a lot of people, some people complain about having, like, Medley and, God, I forget the little Korok's name. having them lug around behind Link, but I personally loved it. Both dungeons I think were really well done. The bosses are great. The overworld is great. Like all this stuff you can explore, and like Ganon's castle is honestly really cool. Like you fight Phantom Ganon. I really love like when you pull the Master Sword, you have to beat like 100 enemies. Like that was crazy. I remember like when I first got there, and I was like, this is impossible. And I don't know, and like just the involvement with like Hyrule as a story, as a kingdom submerged below water was just so great. And it's just such a good game. Like, oh man, I know I said like I can't put all these games in S tier, but Zelda makes it hard, man. All these games are so good. Music direction is great. The Wind Waker is super cool. The final boss, I love. Puppet Ganon was such a unique concept, and the way you fight him is really cool. It honestly added like such a unique significance to the boomerang, which I just thought was cool, And then like the final phase was nice, and like the final fight with Ganon is phenomenal. The final fight is so good. Like just the terrain, the waterfalls, like you're not really on a time limit. The game doesn't give you a time limit, but like in context of the story, you're technically on a time limit. And like Ganon knocks out Zelda. I was not expecting that. And the way I think to this day, Wind Waker still has the coolest finisher of Ganon. I know Skyward Swords is also really, really cool because it has lightning, but I still gotta give it to Wind Waker just because it was like the Wombo combo reflected, and then he like drops and like jumps like 10 feet in the air and just stabs him. Like that shit was crazy. Yeah, overall, S tier game, really good game. Let's talk about Warriors. So Definitive Edition, A tier game. If you like Zelda in the slightest, like the series, you need to play Hyrule Warriors. Even if the gameplay is not for you, it is such a love letter to the series. Like, there's so many Easter eggs, there's so many amazing things in Warriors that just, as a diehard Zelda fan, you can really appreciate. Like, I just think of, like, all these different characters coming together, all these different bosses coming together. Like, their character selection, you get to play as Yuga, you get to play as Ganon, you get to play as Girahim Fi, you get to play as, like, Twilight Midna, a character you see for like 10 seconds at the end of Twilight Princess, you get to play as her. She has her own moveset. It's great. And like they brought so many important items from the Zelda universe and made them weapons. Like you get to play it with the Wind Waker. You get to play with the Twilight Mirror as a weapon. You get to, I think Lana, one of the OCs, has the Gate of Time and the Gate of Souls as a weapon. I know the Gate of Souls is like a Hyrule Warriors thing, but still, it was still cool to see story-related things. The characters, the costumes, the whole world of it. Even if the gameplay isn't for you. Like, the gameplay, I think it's okay. I don't think it's bad. It gets very repetitive. But, like, I don't know. There's just something so sick about Fierce Deity Link's final attack being like Skull Kid sending the moon hurling at him and him cutting it in half. Are you kidding me right now? Are you kidding me? Like, it just, the implications of that also make you think, like, was Fierce Deity that fucking strong? Could he have done that? Like, it's so cool, man. It's so cool. I can't describe it any other way. I don't know, man. It's such a phenomenal thing that any Zelda fan can really enjoy. Like Skull Kid, Zelda, Impa. You get to see all these cool different things. Like you get to play as the spinner. You get to play with the spinner and actually have the spinner people wanted in Twilight Princess, where you could actually just like Beyblade your way around the map. You can do that in this game. The movesets are all so creative, like everything. Does the gameplay get a little repetitive? Yeah. Can I sit down and play Hyrule Warriors for like 2 hours? No. I have to play like a little bit each day or like a little bit at a time because eventually it does get kind of boring. I don't know. Like, I don't know if I'm just like so infatuated with Zelda as a whole that like this game has like an effect on me, but I just love seeing all these like different homages to the Zelda series. Or maybe homage is the wrong word, but like different callbacks to different parts of the Zelda series and seeing them recognized. Like Fierce Deity Link is so awesome. You get to play as Medley. You get to play as Yuga, and he like swings like paintings at you. It's so sick. Medley gets her harp as weapon. You get to play as the King of Red Lions. You get to literally like drive on people as a boat. That's so cool. Toon Link has his sand wand, summons the Spirit Train to beat the shit out of everybody. Like, are you kidding me? I don't know. For me personally, great game, A-tier game. Well, now that we've talked about the first Hyrule Warriors, I'm going to talk to you about the second one, and in my opinion, the only C-tier Zelda game, Age of Calamity. Now, if you know me, you know I love Breath of the Wild. Most of my videos are on Breath of the Wild. It's about me playing Breath of the Wild. But this channel is a Breath of the Wild channel. It's a Zelda quote-unquote channel, but I really play a lot of Breath of the Wild. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity disappointed me on a lot of fronts. First of all, from a gameplay aspect, it does not run nearly as smoothly as the first one, which is kind of a bummer. It has some cool things, like you get to play as a guardian, which is super, super, super sick. The different weapons are cool. I always appreciate seeing that. But, I don't know. What really, I think, now, I completely want to acknowledge the fact that I understand that why I feel this way is a little, like, unreasonable, but let me just say this. When Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity was first announced, they announced it as a prequel, and they said this is what's going to happen before Hyrule Castle, or before the events of Breath of the Wild. And that got me so hyped, because obviously, if you've played Breath of the Wild, you know that everyone is dead in Breath of the Wild. Meaning, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity was going to be this dark, like the ending was going to be so somber, and I was wondering how they were going to implement that. And I was so excited for it. Like, there was like this fan art where it was called like Age of Calamity's final mission, and called Survive. And it was just Link looking at a bunch of guardians. And that shit gave me goosebumps. I was so excited for that. And we did not get that. I think that the events of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity are canon up until a certain moment. And the certain moment is when the essential, the quote unquote, like, not quote unquote, but like the ancestors of the champions come back to save them. So Teba, or whatever you say his name, comes back to save Rivali. I forget her name, comes back to save Urbosa. Sidon comes back to save Mifa, and Yunobo comes back to save Daruk. And let me tell you, it was kind of disappointing, because what was supposed to be a prequel to Breath of the Wild turned out to be an alternate timeline to Breath of the Wild. If I were to sum up the story of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity in like one sentence, it is essentially what would have happened if the champions didn't die 100 years ago. And that's cool, but like at the same time, I don't give a fuck. I don't care. I do understand that it is a little childish of me to feel like this salty over like the story of this game, but like, man, I was so hyped for like from the release to the release, like to when this game, from the reveal to the release date of, I wonder what's gonna happen. I wonder, we're finally gonna get to see the events. And they didn't give us that. They gave us like this version that it was like everybody wins in the end. And I was like, man. And they introduced cool side characters, don't get me wrong. And I do understand that, like, Nintendo, at the end of the day, is a kid's company, or, like, it's more family-friendly. They can't release a game, especially a Zelda game, one of their biggest IPs, where the ending of the game has everybody dying. But then you play through Breath of the Wild and everybody's already dead. You know? Like, Breath of the Wild is such a dark game in concept. It just doesn't show, like, it's just something you have to think about in a way. I don't know, like, damn, I'm sorry. I can't look at Age of Calamity, like, differently. Because to me, it was just like, oh, It was just a disappointment. And I'm sorry if you love Age of Calamity. I don't think it's a bad game. It is what it is. Did I talk about Link to the Past? I didn't. Link to the Past. Okay, you know what? After thinking about it some more, I think I'm gonna do this. I think I like this a little bit better. Very similar to Link to the Between Worlds. I'm not gonna talk about it too much, just because it is very similar to Link Between Worlds. I think a lot of like there are differences. Don't get me wrong, and I really liked Link to the Past, but I remember playing Link to the Past and then playing Link Between Worlds, and I was like, I think Link Between Worlds is just superior. They are both at their core, very similar games, very similar concept. You show up at the beginning, you get bodied, you have to go save Zelda, and then they have the whole lore rule thing. It's just the way you go to lore rule is a bit different. I think the dungeons are very similar. I think except the ending area and the difference between Link to the Past is you actually fight Ganon. You don't fight. No, wait. What happened? God, I can't remember. I think you fight like a sorcerer or something. Either way, a solid game, great game. If you like Link Between Worlds, you'll like Link to the Past. If you like Link to the Past, you'll like Link Between Worlds. They take place in the same world. I would basically call Link Between Worlds a remake, essentially. That is what I would call it. Both at their core very similar and both very good. Okay, now let's talk about Triforce Heroes. B tier. Underrated game. I think it's an underrated game. I had a lot of fun with Triforce Heroes. Okay? I didn't play it with anybody because I have no friends, sad. But I really liked it. I don't know. There was like something really challenging about playing through the game by myself with like the two dummies. And it was just fun. I liked the puzzles. I liked the bosses. I thought it was good. I thought it was okay. Like, would I put it at the top of this list? No. But it was still fun. It was still fun. I think it was a little overhated, but I had a lot of fun with it. So that's just me. We got one more game. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is, in my opinion, a masterpiece. It is... I don't even know where to begin with this game. Like, for those of you who don't know, this is actually my favorite game of all time. There's a reason I play it so much on the channel. I think what is so good about this game, the exploration, perfect. The combat, perfect. The story, perfect. In my opinion, I thought it was cool. I know some people didn't like it. I liked it, okay? The Divine Beasts, yeah, I can admit that, here's what I'll say. Some people did not like Breath of the Wild because it switched up the formula from the traditional streamlined dungeon process that most games are. But the Breath of the Wild is a callback to the first Zelda's style, where you're just kind of given a sword and the game tells you go. You know what I mean? If you want to kind of understand what it's like, I recommend watching Egoraptor's Ocarina of Time video, because he talks about the difference between the OG Zelda formula and then what Zelda became. And in that video, he kind of says that he doesn't like how the newer style of, like, you have just a bunch of dungeons and you go from dungeon to dungeon to dungeon. In my opinion, I love that formula, but I also really love the Breath of the Wild formula. The game gives you so much freedom. You can do whatever you want. The Divine Beasts, I think the only part of the game that I wish was there were dungeons. I still think that they should make proper dungeons. That would be really cool. Maybe, like, not items you get, but, like, abilities or something. I don't know. And the Divine Beasts are a little short. Like Vom Meadow. I can beat Vom Meadow in, like, 10 minutes. 10, 15 minutes. Like, that should not be a dungeon. I do agree with that sentiment. But all the champions are great. The champion abilities are phenomenal. The world is so big. There's so much to do. People didn't like the weapon breaking system. I liked it a lot because I think just using the same weapon over and over again would be extremely boring. I don't know. I feel like the weapons breaking is the game forcing you to maybe use things you may not be comfortable with. It forces you to think outside the box. Okay, I don't have any weapons. What can I do? Can I hurl bombs at this guy? Can I maybe like stasis something and hit it really fast into him? You know what I mean? The physics engine of this game is the greatest one I've ever seen. Okay, the amount of the amount of ways there are to solve problems is so amazing. You can problem solve in so many different ways. One of my favorite things to do is just to watch YouTubers I like play Breath of the Wild, or just new YouTubers, right? Even if I have like 500 hours in the game, even if I've played this game like 8 or 9 times, even if I've thought I've seen everything this game has to offer, watching people tackle problems and think of things in ways I've never done it is so phenomenal. The physics engine is perfect. The rune system is like one of my favorites systems in all of gaming. Like you're given these abilities: magnesis, stasis, cryonis, bombs. And then with those 4 runes, you have so much power. They are applicable in so many different ways. It's just wonderful. I like part of me does like wish like, oh, okay, I wish it was a little more heavier on the music direction. But I think there's something just about like the subtle like music that makes exploring so amazing, so wonderful. Like the areas are all really, really good. The shrines are amazing. The DLC is the most worthwhile thing you will ever buy for 20 bucks. Holy shit. Trial of the Sword is so amazing. The Champion's Ballad is honestly like, I love Champion's Ballad. It essentially adds like 12 new shrines. You fight the 4 blights again, except you're given forced equipment and forced armor. And then you essentially go through like a 5th divine beast where you fight the monk and you get the master cycle. I don't know. I don't want this video to be too long, so I'm just like, I'm gonna cut my thoughts like short there. But Breath of the Wild is like, in my opinion, a 10 out of 10 game, 11 out of 10 game. And as much as I love like every single Zelda game, are like most of them, I think all of them are like honestly, like if this was a game, like a tier list of just all games in general, like I would say like 90% of these entries would be an S tier. S tier for me, or at the bare minimum they would all make A tier. But yeah, man, I don't know. It's just a good ass game, and I think anybody with the Switch should play it. It is truly just an amazing game. Truly an amazing game. That's going to be it from me today. If you enjoyed, consider subscribing and check out the other videos, because it's a lot of Zelda stuff, man. I hope you like that. And I will see you on the next one. Bye.